I am so excited to be here today, and I appreciate everybody who is taking part in today's service. A couple of notes. Number one, today is the first day I've had a voice in about a week, so it's going to come and go, and that's okay. It is not your sound guy, it's me, so there you go with that. I was so thrilled to hear you guys sing the song today, Ain't No Grave, when it said that shame is a robber and love is my redeemer. And that's really what we're here to talk about today, is how to lean into love and to support individuals who are living with mental illness or substance use disorders. And we're going to kind of give you some concrete ways to do just that. So the first question you're probably sitting there asking yourself is, who are you and why are you here? And that's real simple. As Nicole said, my name is Aeryn Williams. My professional title is that I'm a clinical director of services for Hancock County at Family Resource Center. I am also somebody who lives in recovery from mental health. I had some dark times with depression. It was actually my therapist who told me, you know, when you were on the other side of this, you ought to go into therapy. I laughed. So I am not an expert. By that, I mean this. I am a professional, I am trained, and everything I'm going to speak to you today is going to be backed by research and statistics. It's going to be backed by stories of individuals with whom I've interacted. It's going to be backed by my own story. But I am not an expert because each individual who experiences mental illness experiences it in a unique way. So if you're sitting out there today and listening to me and you think, that's not my experience, okay, that's good, right? You are the expert and I am not. And so please recognize that I am only sharing with you the information that I have, okay? Why am I here? Well, as you heard Bruce say, that on a local, state, and national level, we are recognizing that one of the key factors to recovery is connection. And what better place to connect than communities of faith? And so we've discovered that communities of faith can be an essential part to people's healing, and we're looking at how we do that. The other part to why I'm here is because New Life has stepped up and said that this is an area that we want to do. We want to reach people that are hurting, regardless of why they're hurting, and we recognize that some individuals who are hurting are experiencing mental illness. We're also here because you know how to do a lot of this. If I came in and I told you that during the 5-minute break, a family came in, a mom, a dad, 3 kids, and their house just burned down, you would spring into action. I wouldn't even finish the sentence, and some of you would have already identified who's in charge of the prayer chain, who's in charge of the food chain, who has the blankets, who has kids that are that age that can donate toys and clothing, and who can help them with the insurance, and who can help them get pieces back together. You know how to do that. You know how to love in that manner. However, if I told you that a gentleman walked in during the 5-minute break and he's having a panic attack, I'd get a couple of reactions. Some of you would spring into action. You kind of know what's going on. Some of you would go, are we supposed to call 911? And some of you would go, you know, I got to talk to somebody over here, and would kind of disappear because you wouldn't know what to do, not because you didn't want to help, but because you wouldn't know how to help. And so my job here today is to help give you some concrete ways to lean into love. What you will not hear from me today is a deep understanding of what each individual mental illness looks like and feels like. That's not my purpose today. My purpose today is to help us decide how we can lean into love. And so what are we going to talk about? We're going to talk about what is mental illness. We're going to talk about who's affected by mental illness and what can New Life do to lean into love. So that's a summary of what I've just said. So in case I wasn't clear, that's what it is. All right? So first thing I have is a quiz. I'm not going to make you raise your hands. I'm not going to make you answer out loud. But I want you to take a few moments. Some of the individuals in this picture are living with mental illness. I want to test you out. Look at it and decide who you think might be living with mental illness and what that mental illness might be. So now I'm going to reveal the individuals who are living with mental illness. Some of you might have included these individuals. These individuals are stock photographs off of Google. Most of them are probably models. Maybe they were depicting a mental illness or substance use disorder, maybe not. But I have no idea what their life is like. These individuals live with mental illness. In the top right-hand corner, the bald guy there, his name is Dr. Stephen Hayes. He's the founder of Acceptance Commitment Therapy. He's a professor at the University of Arizona. He's a world-renowned speaker and author. He lives with panic disorder. The lady beneath that is the 1957 Miss America, Marilyn Van Derber. So kind of like the quintessential picture of American life at that time. And she's a survivor of sexual trauma and lives with post-traumatic stress disorder. The individual beneath that is Ellen Sachs, or I should say Dr. Ellen Sachs. She is, excuse me, she is the head of the law school at the University of Southern California. She's an international author and speaker as well. She lives with schizophrenia. The lady next to her is Kay Redfield Jameson, and she is also an author, and she lives with bipolar disorder. The gentleman above her is Matt Bell. He's a disc jockey and radio personality out on the West Coast who lives with OCD. And the gentleman at the top in the black and white picture is William Stryon, the author of Sophie's Choice, who lives with major depressive disorder. It's kind of sobering to think these are not the pictures that you pictured with some of those illnesses that I've listed. So what is actually, how prevalent is it really? Nearly 1 in 5 adults lives with mental illness. 1 in 12 adults lives with a substance use disorder. 17% of our youth ages 6 to 17 live with mental illness. 1 out of 3 girls and 1 out of 5 boys will be sexually abused before they reach age 18. So I've given you these numbers, but I'm not really a really great numbers person. And so I wanted to have a different way to kind of picture this. So I took a picture of the United States, and I wondered what would happen if we removed the population of individuals that we just discussed. So if I removed the population of individuals that are adults living with mental illness, California, our most populous state, Oregon and Oklahoma, gone. Adults living with substance use disorders, children living with a mental illness, and finally the 47 million survivors of sexual trauma. All of a sudden, that feels real. If I can imagine that the 48 contiguous states has now turned into this, I'm beginning to understand some key factors about how prevalent this really is. Suicide statistics. There is a completed suicide just in the United States alone every 12 minutes. And for every one of those completed suicides, there's an estimated 25 attempts, which means if I can keep this down to about 36 minutes today, there will be 3 completed suicides and 75 attempts just while I'm speaking to you today. It's really sobering statistics, which means that we all know someone. You know someone in your neighborhood, in your work, in your school, in your family, and in your church. Mental health, mental illness affects all of us, and we're connected to it. New Life has made it a point to reach out to individuals who are hurting, and that's going to include individuals who are experiencing mental illness. And that's good, because they're already here amongst us as well. So I'm wondering if there's someone out there who might be thinking, if it's so common, then why don't I see it? So I was flipping through Facebook, as I'm wanting to do during these times, and I found this photo that I think really captures what people describe as their experience of living with mental illness and that recovery journey while in a faith community. It was kind of a big picture for me. It hit me kind of like a gut punch. And I started thinking about it and recognizing that, what it's like to experience something that other people don't see. Having a piece of you that's different, because person after person told me that they felt like their recovery journey and their faith journey had to be separate. But that seemed unsettling to me because I am one person and both parts of those are true within me. And so how does that happen? I also got struck by the fact that it is not the mirror's fault that they don't see that big chunk missing, right? The mirror can't see what they can't see. It's also not the apple's fault. Because I got to be honest with you, 9 times out of 10, that apple can't turn around and show it for many, many reasons. And so if this is the reality of what it is, then how did we get here? Well, we got here because of a couple of things. We got here because of stigma, fear, misinformation, misunderstandings, and misinterpretations. I'm going to spend some time on the misses, because those are the things that drive the fear and stigma. The first one is the misinformation. It makes really, really great news stories to every time that there's an act of violence or an act that we can't comprehend someone behaving in that manner, of tying it to mental health. Makes great sense. Everybody listens and everybody agrees. Like, it's the one time when you go to work and people are talking about what's happening in the news and everybody has the same opinion. Yes, we need more mental health services. Okay, someone who's funded by mental health services, I like that part of the conversation. But the other part is this, that statistics have shown over and over and over again that an individual experiencing mental illness is much more likely to be the victim of a crime than the perpetrator of a crime. Let me say that again. They are much more likely to be the victim of a crime than the perpetrator of a crime. So misinformation is out there. Oftentimes I'll hear conversations and people will start to talk about mental illness and they'll start to list things that they think are symptoms of a specific illness, and I go, not so much. Because we have been given the idea that things like liking things really neat and clean in your house is always an indicator of OCD. Not actually true, right? So there's some misinformation in there. There are also misunderstandings. Historically, we have done a really horrible job of understanding mental illness. Did you know that for the first 300 years of mental illness treatment, that the treatment consisted of shackling people to walls, often in like a cave-like cellar, barely feeding them, barely clothing them, never giving them sunlight, and having no social interaction? 300 years it took before someone said, you know, I wonder if we gave them some sunlight and took the shackles off, if some of them might get better. It's a novel idea, or it was in the mid to late 1700s. Unfortunately, some of those persist today. Thankfully, we don't see that kind of mistreatment, but we do see the idea that it is a moral weakness or failure, that there's something wrong with them that caused this, or that it's a lack of willpower. If they just worked a little harder, it would all go away. So there are misunderstandings. The final one is misinterpretations. And this one I really get, because here's the thing. All mental health symptoms are rooted in a normal human experience. I'm going to say that one again. All mental health symptoms are rooted in a normal human experience. When I say that, and I link it to the fact that depression includes symptoms like the grief that Aeryn was talking about, everybody goes, yeah, I get that, right? I get how that grief and that depression, those symptoms are kind of like linked and sticky together, right? We get that. We get that worry and anxiety feel an awful lot alike. We get that. Here's where people back away from me or stop the conversation. I go, it's true with psychosis too. And people are like, nope, I've never had that. So here's another test. Again, I'm not going to make you raise your hands. I'm not going to make you amen or anything like that. But how many of you have ever heard somebody say your name and you've said, what? And they said, I didn't say anything. How many of you have ever seen something in the corner move and you turned around and there was nothing there? How many of you have heard your phone ring or felt it vibrate and it didn't? So you've had an auditory, a visual, and a tactile hallucination. They're grounded in normal human experiences. Individuals who experience mental illness, their brain responds to those experiences in a very different way. So where the misinterpretation comes in is when we say, I've felt sad before, and I got over it. I worry, and I know how to stop. I've had intrusive thoughts, and I know how not to act on them. It only took me 3 months to get over my grief. It should only take you 3 months to get over yours. That's where the misunderstandings happen, because we're not recognizing that their brains and their bodies are responding in a different way. In fact, here's the mental illness definition. You don't have to read this whole paragraph. You can look it up in the DSM if you like. The 3 things I wanted to point out, was the first that in order for it to be a mental illness, it has to actually disrupt their life. It has to cause some sort of distress to their life in one of these areas, social, occupational, or other important activities. The individual does not always have to see it, but it does have to have an impact that's negative. It has to also have a disturbance of their thinking, their moods, their behavior that's tied to a psychological, biological, or developmental process. That means it doesn't just happen. It's tied to a deeper issue, a deeper situation that they find themselves in. And the last one is that we have to recognize that an expectable, culturally approved response to common stress or a loss, such as the death of a loved one, is not a mental illness. So if I'm crying uncontrollably because I've lost a relationship, that is not mental illness. That's grief. Yeah? You following along? And that there are ties and pieces with that. So it is more than just sad, it's a brain thing. What you see in front of you is some brain imaging of identical twins, which means genetically they are 100% the same. Except they're not. One is experiencing schizophrenia and one is not. And you'll see the deficits in the right hand are significant for that individual on the right. This compares a neurotypical brain to one that experiences OCD. Those red spots are spots of higher activity. And you can see that the neurotypical brain is able to take those thoughts and move on, and the OCD brain, it kind of circles and creates these loops. It makes it really difficult for it to move away. This has a neurotypical brain in the upper left-hand corner, and then we have PTSD, an individual with PTSD who has an overactive limbic system. That limbic system is the part of our brain that deals with our emotions and, more importantly, tries to keep us alive and comes up with all sorts of different ways to handle that. You can notice that with a TBI, a traumatic brain injury, we see that there are cognitive deficits on the cortical function there. They look like holes on the imaging. And then the bottom right-hand corner is a combination of the TBI and the PTSD. We're not going to go into why all these brain functions work the way they do, but noticing that there's a biological component to this piece, I think, is part and parcel of getting to do this better. So here's the concrete part. What can we actually do? Well, the first thing we have to do is we have to change our language. So what does that look like? First, don't identify them by their illness. I've never heard anybody go, watch out, there's one of those cancers. I don't hear people go, oh, she's one of those cardiomyopathics. I do hear people say, there goes a schizophrenic, a bipolar, a borderliner. And we use those words to identify and classify people. We have to stop. We have to recognize that. In fact, we have to change our language even a little further, and we have to identify them as living with or experiencing a mental illness rather than suffering from. It is true. Mental illness can cause great suffering. And it does not always. It doesn't at all times. I can have depression and not be suffering, right? To say that someone is suffering with it, it brings down that level of functionality. So living with. In fact, we can also change survivor of rather than victim of. Marilyn Van Derber is a survivor of childhood sexual trauma. It took a lot for her to survive, and I owe her the right to call her that. I owe her that respect, that she's a survivor of what she's experienced, not a victim of it. Because she was victimized, and she does not continue to live as a victim. It doesn't define who she is. Here's a hard one. I need y'all to stop shooting all over yourselves and everybody else. We're good at this. We create long lists of shoulds, and I don't know about you, but when I do that, I end up stressing myself out. And when other people do it to me, I don't like them very much. So there's another word I want us to look at, and that's the word but. Think for a moment what you think the definition of but might be. Create it inside your mind. I'm going to tell you that my definition of but means forget everything I just said. I'm going to tell you the only part that matters. So here's the simple one. I'm tired, but I have to go to work. Once I've said that word but, it means I have to go to work and somehow I am magically no longer tired. I don't know about you, but that's not how my life works. We do that with other simple things. Tomorrow's going to be a great day, but you need to clean your room. Right? We say those things. Here's the hard part, is we also tie it to love. We say things like, I love you, but you can't call me that. I love you, but you have got to stop yelling. I love you, but, and fill in the blank. What we do there is we take something that was designed to be unconditional and we automatically make it conditional. Because what the receiver of that message hears is, I will only love you if. That's a dangerous message to send because most of the time it's not the one you meant to send. Instead, there's something around that, and I'm going to not ruin my own slides here. Get off your butts. That's the thing to remember. Get off your butts. And by doing that, you replace the word but with the word and. I am tired, and I have to go to work. Now they're both true. I'm allowed to be tired and recognize that I have responsibilities and have to go to work. Tomorrow's going to be a great day, and today I need to clean my room. They can both be true. Now watch what happens when we take it to those I love yous. I love you, and you're not allowed to speak to me that way. They're no longer tied together as cause and factor. I love you, and I need you to stop yelling. I love you, and fill in the blank. We remove the tendency for people to all of a sudden no longer trust that we love them. It's a powerful thing, and it doesn't take a whole lot of work, except for we will still screw up. I screwed up in the first service. It's videotaped. You can watch it. Churches are called to be a place that extends compassion. Yes? Yes. Great. The difficult part is that as humans, we have a tendency to mix compassion or empathy with sympathy. Empathy is the ability to step into the shoes of another person, and sympathy is feeling bad for them. Okay? But Brene Brown does a much better job than I do of explaining it, so I'm going to let her do that while I get a drink of water.
So what is empathy, and why is it very different than sympathy? Empathy fuels connection. Sympathy drives disconnection. Empathy, it's very interesting. Teresa Wiseman is a nursing scholar who studied professions, very diverse professions where empathy is relevant, and came up with 4 qualities of empathy. Perspective taking, the ability to take the perspective of another person or recognize their perspective as their truth. Staying out of judgment, not easy when you enjoy it as much as most of us do. Recognizing emotion in other people and then communicating that. Empathy is feeling with people. And to me, I always think of empathy as this kind of sacred space when someone's kind of in a deep hole and they shout out from the bottom and they say, I'm stuck, it's dark, I'm overwhelmed. And then we look and we say, hey, you climb down. I know what it's like down here. And you're not alone. Sympathy is, ooh, it's bad, no. You want a sandwich? Empathy is a choice, and it's a vulnerable choice, because in order to connect with you, I have to connect with something in myself that knows that feeling. Rarely, if ever, does an empathic response begin with at least. And we do it all the time. Because you know what? Someone just shared something with us that's incredibly painful, and we're trying to silver lining it. I don't think that's a verb, but I'm using it as one. We're trying to put the silver lining around it. So, I had a miscarriage. Oh, at least you know you can get pregnant. I think my marriage is falling apart. At least you have a marriage. John's getting kicked out of school. At least Sarah is an A student. But one of the things we do sometimes in the face of very difficult conversations is we try to make things better. If I share something with you that's very difficult, I'd rather you say, I don't even know what to say right now. I'm just so glad you told me. Because the truth is, rarely can a response make something better. What makes something better is connection.
The power of changing our language. Avoiding the words at least. Boy, that was big for me, right? Yeah. And the idea that empathy and the choice to sit with someone and feel what they're feeling drives connection versus at least, which drives disconnection. The goal that New Life has brought to us is to drive connection. So this is part and parcel of what we have to do. So I'm going to give you some concrete ideas of things to avoid and things you could try instead. Things to avoid. The phrase, I know how you're feeling. This is a tricky one because some people have indicated that that's been really helpful because when it's true, it's helpful. When it's not true, please don't say it. And sometimes we should probably just say, that sounds really painful. That's okay, because what I'm saying then is I'm saying, you're telling me a story and it sounds painful. Is that right? Is that what you're feeling? Because Nicole might say to me, no, Aeryn, I'm not in pain at all. And I go, great. What is it that you're actually feeling right now? And I give her that opportunity to have that part and to connect with her where she really is, instead of saying, no, you really are in pain. I've already climbed inside your body and your brain, and I'm going to tell you what you're feeling. Things to avoid. I'm so OCD. This is what I talked about before, right? We hear it all the time. I'm so OCD. I'm so depressed. Teenagers are great at this, right? I have like 13-year-olds that are like, I'm so depressed. You are? Yeah, Mom took away my phone. Not one of the major symptoms. So we have to figure it out, right? But we use this language. The world has taken this language that was meant to describe a specific set of symptoms, and we've made it colloquial, and we've made it apply to these minimized things. And what that does is it minimizes the impact of those who are actually experiencing those pieces. So instead, simply say, I like things really organized, or I get really frustrated when schedules are disrupted. Those are things that are common human experience, but if you don't have OCD, please refuse to say, I'm so OCD. Things to avoid. Captain Fix-It. This is super hard for therapists. And it's hard for therapists because when someone starts to share a story with me, I'm human, and there's that part of my brain that goes, oh, I've heard this before. I know what's going to happen. I know what's going to happen. I know what's going to happen. And we start to go, okay, I can offer this, and I can do this, and this is the resources they should do, and this is the intervention, and I am going to save the day. People don't like that. And here's the other part. What I do when I take the Captain Fix-It role is I say, my job is to come up with all of the potential solutions, and your job is to tell me why they won't work. That's what happens, right? Because the other person's constantly, well, I tried that, but blah, 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 blah. Or I don't like to eat kale. Or whatever it is, they're going to shoot out all these reasons why it won't possibly work. And it's going to be frustrating to them. They're not going to like it. And I'm going to get frustrated. I'm not going to like it. Try to avoid Captain Fix-It. And instead, what you can try is, what do you need in this moment? Right now, what's the thing you need the most? If you ask somebody that question, it gives them the opportunity to tell you. Sometimes it might be something simple. I need a hug. Or I need space. Or I need quiet. Or I need to go run, or I need a distraction. Then you can help fill that. Because if you've asked them what they need, they come up with the solution that's going to be most helpful for them in that moment. Time heals all wounds, and any other such phrase. This is another one that's hard, because some people do like to have that reminder, but the problem is we use them like as if they're in a back pocket manual, and we flip them out, and we're like, which thing shall I say today? And when we pull it out 9 times out of 10, it feels dismissive, and it feels minimizing, and it feels like they're not being heard. So instead, just reflect back. This is really hard. I get that today, that pain is really hard. Whatever that issue is that's happening is really hard today, and that's okay. Then, once you've established that empathy and that connection, then you can say, and, notice I didn't say but, and it can get better, and it will get better. That those two things can be true, but you have got to start with meeting them right where they're at with that. Things to avoid. You are avoiding me. One of the major symptoms in almost every mood disorder is a withdrawal from social interactions. When you're on the receiving end of it, it can feel like they're ghosting you, or they're unfriending you, or it's awful lot about me. Right? It feels like when someone's doing that to me, it hurts, and I'm mad. And I'm like, you know what? You are being horrible to me. And in reality, we need to recognize it for what it is a symptom of what they're going through, and say, it's not about me in this moment. And there's more coming on this, so we'll hold on here a moment. This is the one that makes everybody here uneasy. Things to avoid. I'll pray for you. So I'm going to move on to the next part here. Try instead, actually pray for them. Pray for them in your closet at home. Pray for them in your war room. Pray for them when you're driving down your car. Don't feel the need to share their story and pray for them in a large Bible study. That's probably not the best. Or stop and pray over them. Because time and time again, I hear the exact same language coming from the exact same person. They will tell me, when they say, I'll pray for you, I feel dismissed. I feel like they want the conversation to end because they're uncomfortable. I feel ignored, and I feel like they can't connect with me. That exact same person said to me, but you know, this one time I told this story to somebody, and they stopped what they were doing, and they prayed over me. And it meant so much. Or someone else told me, but there was this one time I said I was having a hard time, and someone sent a prayer and a text message. Not a prayer full of shoulds, just a prayer for where they were at that moment and how much that meant for it. So moving from I'll pray for you to praying for them. You need to, ... I don't care what it is. You need to take these vitamin supplements. You need to use these essential oils. You need to exercise more. You need to avoid red food dye. I don't care what it is. As soon as you start with you need to, what does the other person do? Talk to the hand. I'm done. So instead, I'm here. You are stuck on repeat. You keep telling me the same stories. You keep doing the same things. You keep getting the same results. Instead, I'm here. Why can't you get better? I did. Why can't you? Why can't you get over this? Why can't you move on? Why can't you change? Instead, I'm here. Are you getting a pattern? Are you picking up on this pattern? And that's because the greatest gift we could give any human being, excuse me, the greatest gift we can give any human being, including human beings experiencing mental illness, is the gift of presence. So how do you do that? What does that actually look like? Well, the first one is you meet them where they are. That applies figuratively. Meet them at their stage of change, what they're ready for. Meet them with where they are kind of at mentally and emotionally and all those things. It also applies literally. Sometimes when they're in those isolating pieces, you have to actually go where they are. I had someone say to me, I was doing that, I was pulling away from people, and I had a friend who texted me and said, I'm coming over with coffee, open the door. Sometimes you just have to show up. When you do show up, allow them to just be okay or not. Excuse me, I have to get a drink of water. Allow them to be okay or not. One of the most powerful things we can say to a human being is it's okay to not be okay. It's okay to not be okay when you're around me. You can actually let down your guard. I had a medical condition that no one ever told me causes panic attacks. It was great. But I had a friend who just said, you don't have to pretend anymore. I'll just sit here while you freak out. And that was huge for me. Allow yourself to just be in a real and authentic way. I'm a pretty touchy-feely person. I'm a therapist, right? Everybody knows I'm going to ask you how you're feeling. Everybody knows I'm going to ask you if I'm hearing you correctly. All of those things. If you're not touchy-feely, don't try to be. Because that's fake, and they can see right through it, just like you could if I were all of a sudden to pretend like I wasn't that person. It's okay to just be. Spend some time without distraction. Be intentional. This goes true, folks, for your partners, for your children, for your employees, for individuals living with mental illness. Take time to set aside your phone, shut off the email, and just for that moment, make that person your most important thing. Huge gift. Huge gift. Ask questions. These are open-ended questions to which you don't already know the right answer. Okay? Super important. Asking questions. How are you feeling? What do you need? How can I support you? Those are great questions. Don't already know the answers to. Once you hear it, reflect what you hear and check for understanding. This is the moment where everybody's like, okay, all of you therapists do the same thing. Because we all go, so what I hear you saying is, right? They even do it on television. It's one of the few things they get right about therapists on television. But the truth of the matter is it's key, because have you ever said something to somebody and they come back with something that had nothing to do with what the message you meant to send? And you're like, I didn't mean that at all. And if they don't do it with what I hear you saying, or something that says, is this what you're trying to tell me? The conversation's over because you're like, they don't get me. And you peace out. Right? So there's that part as well. So I'm going to wrap up with a activity that I did. I had asked some individuals who were living in recovery of mental health or substance use disorder. I said, I'm going to this church. I'm presenting on this topic. It's right around Valentine's Day. Can you make me some Valentines? And on those Valentines, tell me something that someone did that you found helpful, that gave you the message that you were valued, that you were loved, and that you were supported. And here's some of the things they said. Excuse me. They asked if I wanted a hug, then they hugged me genuinely when I said yes. They asked if I wanted a hug, and then they actually acted on when I said yes, in a genuine way. They made eye contact and asked how my week had been. The eye contact and delay for a response felt great. We're in a world where we say, hi, how are you, so frequently that someone says hi and we go, fine. Right? We've got this piece. So asking questions that you really care about the answers and being patient enough to wait if they can't formulate a response right away. Someone made my day by talking with me about an old friend. I loved this one, and part of why I loved this one is it had nothing to do with mental health. Part of making individuals who are experiencing mental health feel important and loved are the same things you do with your best friends. They're the same things you do with your parents. They're the same things you do with your kids. Having a conversation with them. They included me. They listened without judging. This is super hard, folks. It's hard because we got the big judgments. The big judgments, right, wrong, good, bad. And then we got all the shoulds that creep in. And those feel an awful lot like judging when you're on the receiving end of them. You told me you weren't going to fix me because I wasn't broken. They stopped seeing them as something broken that needed to be fixed, and instead they saw them as someone who was experiencing something that needed to be lived through. Texted me. I was told that I was a good leader. So this individual is experiencing mental health symptoms, having difficulty with them, and someone took the time to point out something good in them and to praise it, to give them an opportunity to use it, even amongst the experiencing their mental illness symptoms. Huge gift. Believed me. Too often, people share their story and are not believed. The gift of believing in someone is a massive gift. This is the picture that I used at the beginning, and I don't have a Valentine made out for it, but it's probably one of the biggest things. When people ask me what it is that I do as a therapist, I get that a lot. I tell them that my job is to create and hold spaces for people to share with me things that no human should have to share so that they have a space in which to heal. The act of holding space for people is incredibly gift-giving. Hold hope for people when they can't have hope on their own. Believe that they're going to heal when they can't believe it themselves. Hold faith for them when they feel disconnected from their faith. Hold it for them so that when they come back, they pick up right where they're left off and don't feel like they're already outsiders. Hold hope, hold faith, hold love for the individuals that are in your life. HancockHelps.org is a great place to go if you need help connecting with the resources. It's pretty user-friendly. There's nice little pictures, emergency numbers, providers, mental health screenings you can actually take online, and support meetings. They're all there. There are plenty of providers within the area. The Adams Board, Jennifer Schwartzlander, the deputy director, was here earlier today. They're supporting it. You heard the dean from Weinbrenner, who's saying that they're working on things as well. There are community supports. In fact, there are some things that you can do if you want to learn more. This mental health first aid trainings. This is an 8-hour course. We do it often. You can find it online. Follow the Adams Board. You'll see them. And in those 8 hours, we teach you exactly the same way as we teach regular physical first aid. What do you do when you come across someone in a mental health crisis so that you can be just as prepared for them as you could to know how to handle someone that broke their arm? QPR trainings stand for Question, Persuade, Refer, and that's for if you encounter an individual who shares with you that they're having suicidal thoughts. It's really scary, if you've never had that happen before, to know what to do, and this training helps you know what is the right thing to do in that moment so that you can help them get some help and get safe. Grief recovery groups focus on any kind of loss. We do them repeatedly throughout the community. It's very helpful. NAMI has peer-to-peer and family-to-family groups. A couple of weeks ago, Bill Sparks spoke here briefly in an interview, and he shared with you how that group was instrumental in his recovery journey. So with that, I just want to thank you for taking time to decide how you can lean into love, even when fear and stigma might make you want to take a step back. And I hope that you walk away with a few concrete things that you can do. Thank you so much for having me here today.